My name's Dave Dubeau, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
Hey kids, welcome back. As you probably know by now, I'm up here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Love Canada, love being Canadian. However, there are some downfalls to Canada and being Canadian. The number one thing, besides the weather sometimes, is the tax situation. In fact, years ago, there was a book called Take Your Money and Run. And it was a very, very popular book. It was written by a Canadian who escaped with his cash and went overseas. Hell, one of my uncles took that, applied it himself, and basically moved overseas with his cash and ended up having to kind of avoid the Canadian government for quite some time. But there's a lot of interest in taking money, not just for Canadians, but for people in North America in general, and investing overseas. And Mikkel Thorup, our guest today, is an expert on that. He's been doing this. He's been living overseas, I believe, for 26 years now. He is originally a Canadian, like myself. Then he got smart and got the heck out of Dodge. He's living in beautiful Panama City, Panama. Much warmer weather, especially right now in the beginning of January when we're recording this. And he's got his own podcast helping people to invest abroad. So, Mikkel, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Pleasure's all mine, Dave. Thank you very much for having me. And hopefully today I can inspire a little bit of your audience and educate. And it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So, Mikkel, just give us the big broad strokes overview. What are the biggest benefits for people for taking their money overseas, out of the country, and investing abroad?
Well, let's make sure that we're clear on one thing on the front end. Okay,
Yes.
A lot of the work that I do is dependent on, if we're talking to a Canadian audience, on leaving Canada. Okay, so it's not about just taking some money and then, opening up a Swiss bank account, a numbered account you might have seen in some movies or something like that, and you don't have to declare it. You don't have to say anything. This is false. This is false on every level. You have a legal tax obligation back to your home tax country on every dollar that you make anywhere in the world if you are a Canadian tax resident. Now, if you are not a Canadian tax resident, meaning you've been through a deemed disposition, you've done an imaginary sale of everything that you owe, you've paid your exit tax, and you have physically left the country, well, there's a lot of magic that can happen, actually. We can leave and we'll have no reporting requirements back to the Canadian government. We'll have no tax obligations back to the Canadian government for the rest of your life, as long as you follow a couple of caveats, and we can get
as long as you stay the heck out of Dodge, you stay out of Canada. Now, are most of your people that you work with Canadian, American, European, or all hodgepodge of folks?
I would say about half of my business, or let's call it 40 some odd percent are Canadian, 40 some odd percent are Americans, and the remainder is going to be the rest of the Anglo-Saxon world. Okay. And some English-speaking Germans and English-speaking French and Swedish and things like this. But the bulk of my work is Americans and Canadian.
Okay, very good, Mikkel. So it's somebody who wants to not only invest overseas, but they want to exit the country completely themselves and live abroad as well. Hence, expatriate, right? That's what it's expat. That's what that's all about. So who are these folks typically in your experience?
Well, let's be clear, though. I mean, there are kind of two different buckets here. I have one group of people who don't like what's happening, the direction of the world. They don't like the taxes, things like that. But we're going to set up a plan B for them, an economic plan B. Now, that might not help them from the tax standpoint today, but what it can do is move some money offshore so that if they need access to it, they have access to capital, maybe a second property overseas. You can use it as a vacation rental. You can go and visit it. Things like this, a bank account, a brokerage account, precious metals, all of that stuff overseas. That is not reliant on you leaving the country, just having a backup plan. It's maybe not going to save you a lot on taxes, but it's still there to help you. And then we've got the second bucket.
So sorry, just to focus on that for a second, because that's fascinating. Backup plan for them like another COVID situation happening and then
Exactly.
pulling the plug and saying, to hell with this, and I'm getting out of Dodge, which a lot of Canadians did during COVID.
That, but there can also be social unrest, which we saw in the United States over the last few years. We saw war in Europe. We continue to see war in Europe. We can see communism, the rise of socialism, a lot of these types of things, aggression from governments against their own people. There are many reasons that people know and understand that they need to protect their downside. And that's the industry that I work in, is protecting the downside. Yes, we want to increase the upside, and that's fantastic, but we don't do it with massive amounts of debt or leverage or speculation or any of these types of things.
This is a security blanket.
Very downside protection. Exactly.
Okay, cool. All right, I got my head around that. And then the second bucket is?
Second bucket is things have already gotten bad. And, it's not a if this is going to happen, it's already happened. And so they are leaving, right? And these are the productive members of society, the people who are entrepreneurs and business owners and investors, a lot of the people who built our beautiful country. A lot of these people are just fed up. They're done and they're leaving, And it's a shame for Canada that Canadian federal government does not realize this, does not try to treat productive members of society a little bit better, to a little bit more respect, because it's one thing that the capital is leaving, as in financial capital, which is important, but arguably the other side of the coin, which is the intellectual capital, which is leaving Canada and other Western
entrepreneurial capital too, right? The entrepreneurial part.
Exactly.
So it's almost like an Atlas Shrugged kind of situation.
Sure. That is, Ayn Rand was a very interesting character and wrote her books at a very interesting time in history. I'm not so much of bringing people to one spot and then only having us interact with each other. Yeah. My work is actually about moving to another country, bringing productive capital with us, intellectual, emotional, philosophical, all these types of things, but then interacting with the local people and having a knowledge transfer and giving back and being part of a society and a culture and a community who respects these types of things, opposed to vilifies people who build and create, right? And that's in Latin America, which is happens to be where I am. They're very welcoming. They love to see people come down to their countries and share in the values and create something new down here. So it's not a Ayn Rand, little enclave. It's the whole country. Like, we have freedom of movement throughout. And by the way, the weather is much nicer. And by the way, the taxes are drastically less. And we've got organic food. And, we can go swimming in the ocean. We can be in the Caribbean or in the Pacific,
So are you recommending Panama primarily, which is where you are? Or do you have people interested in multiple different?
So this is an interesting one. I do like Panama very much. I am based out of here for the last 6.5, almost 7 years. And a lot of my clients agree with me that Panama is a fantastic place. However, it is not the only place that I work in. I actually work in many different countries. But because our podcast is very popular, the Expat Money Show and our newsletters at expatmoney.com are very, very popular, a lot of people kind of see my lifestyle and they're like, ooh, I want that. So they come down and visit me and really like it. So I'd say Panama is the most popular place, but there's other countries as well. There's lots of other really fantastic places.
Well, there are. What would you say are, based on what your clients do, like the top 3?
Okay. Panama, absolutely, which we talked about. Costa Rica is still very popular. It's often the number one spot that Americans and Canadians think about when moving to Latin America. Costa Rica is a very good option. There's a slight rivalry between Costa Rica and Panama, so I'm firmly on the Panama side, some of the soccer and stuff like that. But I like Costa Rica. We've got a development there that we're doing. We've got about 135 hectares of land that we're doing a community there. It's a very good place. A lot of people move to Mexico. It's not my favorite place. I love the food. I love the people. That's great. But I believe that there are legit safety concerns in Mexico that we need to be aware of. Also, top marginal tax rate is 35%. I think that's gross. I don't want anything to do with that, right? But it is a place that a lot of people move to. I often move people to more South America. If we're not talking about Costa Rica and Panama, I move people to Paraguay, to Uruguay, to countries like this, kind of the southern cone of South America, which are very safe, stable areas, very good taxes, wide open spaces. If you like meat and red wine, you'll be in very good company down there. And, those are places that are usually quite popular with my client base.
Hey there, if you're a capital raiser, a syndicator, or a fund manager, and you're looking for a steady flow of incoming accredited investor leads, then go ahead, grab a free copy of my new book, How to Get 20 Accredited Investor Meetings Every Month Without Cold Calling, Networking, or Chasing People. You can get that at 20accreditedinvestorsbook.com. Again, that's the number 20accreditedinvestorsbook.com.
Interesting. Very, very cool. Now that makes sense. So I understand why a lot of Canadians want to get out of the country. What are the main reasons Americans want to get out of the USA?
They're very similar reasons. They often don't like what's happening geopolitically with their country. They want to protect their downside as well. You have to also understand that the United States is the most litigious country in the world. You can and will be sued for everything. Now, you asked earlier about my client base. The bulk of my clients are either small business owners, entrepreneurs, creating value in the marketplace, or they're highly paid professionals. Think lawyers, doctors, accountants, things like this. Now, if you're an obstetrician in California, it is not a question of if you will be sued. It will be how many times you are sued and for how much. And what's happening in the United States is a lot of these suits goes above and beyond any type of insurance for the lawyer or the doctor or the financial planner or the nurse or whatever it might be. And one of those that goes against you can wipe out an entire lifetime of accumulating capital. And so a lot of my clients might be in their 50s, and a doctor in their 50s should be able to work for another 10, 15, 20 years, right? But they're choosing early retirement instead, or moving into a different field because they don't like the environment that they're in anymore. And it's just too risky. And if you're saving up all of these millions of dollars, but for what? Cost of living in California, New York, even in Texas and things like that is through the roof. You can come down to Panama, you're going to pay 1/4 of what you would back home. And there are some very nice programs by the IRS that can legally reduce your taxes. And then insurance is less and all of these things. So actually, when we do the math with these guys, these guys and gals, they realize it's like, I can actually retire at 53 or 55 or something, and I don't have to work until I'm 68. And I can go and travel and spend more time with my spouse and see the grandkids and go swimming or surfing or whatever it might be. But it doesn't have to be working all the time and worried about being sued or some type of economic downturn in your home country. Does that make sense?
Makes a ton of sense, Mikkel. And as we're kind of wrapping up our conversation, and we might have to have you back again because this is fascinating stuff, would you mind kind of sharing with me one of your favorite success stories about one of your clients in bucket A? Leave names out, obviously. And then we'll look at a success story of one of your clients in bucket B that moved lock, stock, and barrel somewhere and is very, very active in that local economy. And they're not just kicking back, retired, but they're actually proactively doing stuff. So what would be a great example of bucket A?
So it's so interesting that you should ask this question, because I think this is actually the most rewarding part of my work. Because just to be transparent with you, Dave, I don't have to work anymore. I'm independently wealthy now after investing overseas for many years. I don't have to work. But I keep working and running my business because I really get a big kick out of helping families through this process. So a client will come to me and they'll be stressed about the politics, about what's happening, about this left-right divide and all of the, families not talking to each other, and they don't like the banking and freezing of bank accounts and things like that. And they come to me and their shoulders are all high and they're stressed and they're, you can feel the worry, and they're already worried that they're behind the 8 ball and there's not going to be enough time. And then week by week by week, after we're taking our calls together, their shoulders kind of drop, the pitch and their cadence slows down, and we get a few things done and they start to feel good, right? We get a bank account, a brokerage account, a precious metals account. Maybe we buy a second home that they get to use for vacation, or they bring the kids or the grandkids for vacation to a lifestyle property. And then when they're not using it, they're making a bit of cash flow that pays for all the property taxes and HOA and any of these things, put a bit of cash in their pocket. We leave the money offshore. We declare it. We absolutely declare it, but we leave it offshore in, offshore financial centers. And, week after week, month after month of working with me, we get all this sorted. And now they can enjoy their normal life back home because they know in the back of their head, if something happens, they just get on an airplane. They've got a place to go. They got a bank account. They got their home. They got some clothes, maybe personal effects, things like that. They're familiar with it. Maybe they've started to learn the local language, Spanish or Portuguese or whatever it might be. And that's meaningful to them. And that transition moment for them is amazing to watch, Dave. Like it is just, I just think it's such a cool feeling to be there and to see these things. Now, what I just said about all of this, the feeling from my side is the same whether I'm working in bucket A or bucket B. I guess the difference with bucket B is that they are getting on an airplane, they are moving to another country. And then you get to see them interacting.
Yeah. So what I was asking is, did you give me one example of one of your favorite success stories, one of your clients that did that?
All right. Let me try to think of someone. I mean, I work with about 170 private clients, about 80 group coaching people, and we've got about 300 people in a membership, right? I have a family of mine that are from New Zealand, and we moved them from New Zealand, Panama, and I had them over to the house for dinner a couple of weeks ago, and they had sold the house that they built from scratch. They thought they were going to die in this house, but they didn't like the situation in New Zealand. And they realized that they needed to do something. And we moved them out, and we moved a lot of their money out of the stock market. And we moved it into precious metals, something tangible. And I don't know if you've been following the precious metals market, but silver is up over 150% over the last year. And gold is up about 65% or more over the last year. And if we look out, from the last 2 years, silver was sitting at $22 and now it's sitting at $80. So people are up about 400% on this. We moved it out of risky assets, speculative type of assets. We put it in something tangible. We moved them here to Panama. They have nice weather. They got a nice little rental property. They're going in the ocean. I have some of my clients, they picked up surfing, which was pretty cool. And now they go surfing in warm water instead of having to wear a jumpsuit or a wetsuit, I should say. And
do you have any clients actually starting businesses and going to work in the new countries that they move into, or is it mostly retirement type situation?
It is not mostly retirement situations, but it is not coming and necessarily starting a local business. It's actually something a little bit different. What happens a lot of times is that people will either retire, which we talked about, but they will transition their existing business to an online business. So I have an American client of mine, husband and wife, no kids, and he was working for an insurance company. And he was making good money, and he was an executive at an insurance company. He went, after working with me, we went to his boss and we made a proposition that instead of paying him as an employee, that he could move to a consultant for the company. And that's what he did. And he went from doing 8 hours a day to like 3 hours a day. And then I had brunch with him at the country club here. And he was telling me, and we were, everything had worked very, very well. And he was telling me this, he was making the same money as he was before, but now he's playing golf and blah, blah, blah. And I listened to him and I was like, you should double your fees. Like, what? I was like, just double them. They'll pay it. Guaranteed. You're super highly skilled. You know what you're doing. You're so valuable to them. I listened to you for the last hour. Just double them. Got an email, Dave, like 3 days later. I doubled them and they agreed. And I actually am now getting a couple of extra hours from them. So he gets up at 5:30, 6 in the morning, does a few hours of his work. He has the whole afternoon with his wife. He's making more money before. They're going for walks. He was in good health. He'd lost a few pounds and, vitamin D from the sunshine. I'm super, super happy.
Oh, awesome. Mikkel, this is fascinating stuff. Remind us, what's the name of your podcast?
So the podcast is called Expat Money Show, which you'll be able to find anywhere that popular podcasts are found. And then our website is expatmoney.com. That's probably the best place to find us. We've got newsletters and social media and blah, 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 lots of stuff on there. But if you just go to expatmoney.com, you'll find everything right there.
Awesome. Mikkel, this has been fascinating. Congratulations. And gosh, I wish you had been around whatever it is now, 30 years ago, or whatever the hell it was that I first moved to Costa Rica. You would have saved me a lot of trouble, that's for sure, my friend. So keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on, Dave. Amazing program. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. All right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you on the next one.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewsyou.com.